2004. A Daughter's Tribute. My father's experiences during World War II affected him more deeply and permanently than anything else in his life. Yet his children grew up knowing almost nothing about those years. Dad never talked about the war. My siblings and I knew only that he had been a pilot and that he had won some medals, but that he didn't see himself as a hero. He saw only that he had done his duty. Starr Smith's book has opened a door for me into this part of my father's life. Mr. Smith conveys with great skill what it meant to fly in the 8th Air Force during the war, to be operations officer of a bomb group. What was involved, for example, in the planning and execution of missions. Above all, Mr. Smith, who worked with my father during that time, shows us what he was like as an individual in this role of pilot and leader. I know the war held terrible memories for my father, as it must for anyone who lived through the combat. But he was also deeply proud to have served his country. He would feel honored by this book. Kelly Stewart Harcourt, University of California, Davis. Introduction. On a bright, crisp day in early fall 1945, the majestic Queen Elizabeth arrived at Pier 50 in New York City after a danger-free voyage from Europe. Aboard was Colonel Jimmy Stewart, the renowned Hollywood movie star, and now the commander of the 2nd Combat Wing of the famous 8th Air Force. Along with Stewart and his troops on the Queen Elizabeth that day were soldiers, sailors, and airmen returning to America after their victorious battles in the European Theater of Operations, ETO. Although they had no way of knowing it, and no inclination to think about it on that joyful day in New York, for millions of Americans who served their country, World War II would be the primal point, the defining years of their lives. Time would be measured, friendships and dates remembered, events and experiences recalled, all based on before the war, during the war, after the war, and the war years. Jimmy Stewart was no different. Jonathan Coe, author of Jimmy Stewart, A Wonderful Life, wrote, "Almost 50 years later, he would tell an interviewer that his military experience was something he thought about every day, and said it was one of the great experiences of his life. In response to the question, greater than being in the movies, Stewart answered without hesitation, much greater." But this September 1945 day was homecoming. In true American style, the big bands of Sammy Kaye and Cab Calloway gave the veterans a musical welcome as they disembarked from the Queen Elizabeth. Leland Hayward, Stewart's longtime friend and business associate, managed to be the first to greet him. Stewart later told Hayward's daughter Brooke, now the wife of band leader Peter Duchin, that he had always admired her father's ingenuity, but never more than when he got through the military security and was the first to welcome him home. Friends of mine who made the Atlantic crossing with Stewart have said that he shook the hand of every person in his wing as they stepped off the Queen Elizabeth that day. When Colonel Stewart said goodbye to his men, he had been in uniform for more than 4 years. He wore the ribbons of the Distinguished Flying Cross with oak leaf cluster, presented by General Jimmy Doolittle, the Air Medal with 3 clusters, the French Croix de Guerre with palm, and the commendations of his superiors. Although he would be the last person to admit it, and truly the first to shy away from any suggestion of such an idea, the simple fact was that Jimmy Stewart was returning to America as a wartime hero, a decorated bomber pilot and combat leader, not just a movie star in uniform. Stewart was on combat duty with the 8th Air Force in England for almost 2 years, at an essential time, flying combat missions in enemy skies and commanding bomber crews. He flew 20 missions,